Jerusalema ikhaya lami ilondoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana Jerusalema ikhaya lami ilondoloze uhambe nami zungangishilana.
So moving on swiftly to our next segment, we have a young fireball, firebrand. Oh my gosh, brace yourselves, guys. We have a young person who we're reeling into Step Up Youth. He's very, very intelligent, very driven, very motivated. He's into gaming, and one of the things that he's working on, one of the projects that he's working on is a game that addresses social injustice, which is just genius, I think. So I won't sell too much of it away because I was having a mentorship session with him and I was telling him, you need to protect your intellectual property. You need to make sure you get everything protected before you even go to the investors or funders. You need to make sure you've got everything in place. So I won't give too much away. I'll let him speak. Elson Sibanda, we welcome you. The floor is yours.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. Can I share my screen?
Yeah, sure. Mary, could you enable that for us, please?
Yes, he should be able to.
Okay, and well, thank you for having me, Epi. Thank you for having me on. This has been amazing so far. Yvonne, that was amazing music. The talk by Lorraine was inspiring. Eliza was great. And Hashim, that was also a great talk there. And I guess you can consider this a follow-on from that talk. He was talking about the politics and using politics to further change. Right now, I'm talking about games as change, or in a more broader sense, I'm talking about the activism side of change, the grassroots side of change. I mean, they're both two sides of the same coin. And yeah, so let me go forward. So first, this is going to be centered around the Black Lives Matter movement, partially because that's the project I'm working on right now, that I'm making a game around that movement. And yeah, I think it's important that, well, Black lives do matter and that the injustice that is being seen all over the world needs to be addressed. And I guess the problem is some of these conventional ways of addressing it, some of these conventional ways of activism don't always work. Sometimes they fall flat. So firstly, I'll talk about the games industry. I'm sure you've all heard about it, but I must tell you, it's much bigger than you think. As you see here, $159 billion. That's how big this industry is. And in lockdown, so many more people have been spending their time, their pastimes, playing video games. It's a Goliath. And so when you see little Timmy playing video games, it's not just a pastime. There's context to that. There's content within that. I mean, the amount of social skills that you can gain from playing a video game with other people, the hand-eye coordination skills. In fact, there's certain parts of the army that specifically look for video gamers to man their drones. I mean, it's not a very great example. People who man drones often get PTSD, but it's a great skill to have. Gaming is no longer just a pastime or a waste of time. It's a career. Now I'll talk on activism. I mean, as everybody remember, last summer, the fire that was lit under everybody, that everybody was going out and marching and protesting. And one very interesting thing about those protests is how young they skewed. I mean, as history will tell you, protests are normally done by the young, but specifically from those ages of 18 to 29, that they came out in force. And another interesting thing about those specific protests were the diversity. that they were so diverse. It wasn't just Black people, it wasn't just minorities, it was young people of all kinds. It speaks to a social consciousness seen in this upcoming generation. One thing I would say about activism, a problem that it can be seen in traditional activism is that it's kind of done to show off. I mean, because if you go to a protest, you know, you go with your camera, you put it on Instagram, you're not protesting for a real reason, you're protesting for clout. And of course, not everybody is like that, but I mean, oftentimes it is. And so combining these two things, combining video games and combining activism, get documentary games. And documentary games are really interesting because when somebody plays a game, they're alone at home. And if you're alone at home, you don't have people around you. It's hard to play a game for clout because you're playing it by yourself. And so in this area of using video games for documentaries, for change, it's a great way of affecting people where they are. When they play this game alone, they're forced to battle with these notions, these ideas by themselves. And as this quote says, I'll read it out. It's not a magic bullet. You're not going to have a single game that gets everyone interested in one moment in history that they've never heard before. Unless we have many examples of documentary games that really play in the genre in general, and the specific examples in particular, it can't be considered successful. We need more games that aren't just frivolous fun. Frivolous fun is important, but we need games as activism. We need art as activism. And now, let me take this back a bit. I've been framing this conversation around both video games and activism, but it's a broader conversation in general. It can be change in you, that I have had to adapt my activism for this new age we live in. But everything else is changing too. I mean, in this post-COVID world, everything has changed. Brick and mortar stores are closing. Essential services, they still exist, but to a diminished rate. Once upon a time, you could rely on, if everything goes bad, I can get a job in a supermarket. Well, robots are now taking over that job at the supermarket. That no sector, traditional sector, is safe. I mean, even something like being a lawyer, it's a very sought after job. It's kind of like, yeah, one of the best jobs around. But that job is becoming less and less possible to do with this post-COVID age. And even as things start rolling out, there's moves towards digitization. So a majority of lawyers don't exist. That I would, well, implore anybody listening to look to tech sectors and look at those jobs, because many of those jobs are future-proof. I mean, say a lofty idea, I want to make films. Well, when somebody says that, you might think that's a pipe dream, but there's a realistic way to get there. I mean, if you study budgeting and you work on budgeting on a film, you're still making films and you're doing budgeting. It's such a transferable skill. The fact that the world is changing and you need to change too. So I did talk about Black Lives Matter at the moment. I'm not talking about that anymore. I'm talking about you. I'm talking about your movement, your moment, and your people, that you have the chance to affect change around you. You have more power than you think. Thank you. Thank you for listening.
Wow, wow, wow. Woohoo! Thank you so much, Elson. Extremely insightful. I love the way you combine video games with activism. I would have never thought that before I actually spoke to you last week. That had not crossed my mind. So you really opened up my mind. In as much as I was mentoring you and using general business principles, you were also educating me as well. So that was like really, really powerful. Thank you for that presentation. Very eye-opening. I'm curious to hear what other people have to say. If you've got any comments or questions for Elson, please fire away.
Amazing. Big up to you, man. I love what young people do, and I love activism, and I love technology. I'm no technology, but I love the way you combined all those powerful forces. And I can't wait to see what you become in the future. I see a future billionaire. So I'm your new best friend from today on, so that you won't need me when you start making money.
Amazing. Amazing. Anyone else?
I simply envy the world with you in it. Good grief. I mean, I think it's amazing. Just stay. I know sometimes it's hard to feel like you're making a difference, isn't it? But I can only say just stay there, be present, and stay in the moment and keep going. Even if sometimes you feel that it's just like, you're thinking, oh, where is this going? I think the world is listening, and I think people are taking it in. And we certainly need Black young boys to really be role models, to stand up and to be present and to actually champion their cause. So absolutely well done to you. I certainly envy the world.
That's amazing. I'd just like to claim that these are the kind of people that we produce at Step Up Youth.
So keep going. That's why we're all here.
I claim.
Hey, P, you didn't read my comment.
Okay, I'm going to read the comments just now. Okay, so it says, Elson, this is an awesome idea, and I can see mega bucks. Remember your Auntie Mercy. You'll be a tycoon soon, and I can smell riches coming your way. Hey, so that's from Mercy. And Cesar says, I simply envy the world with you in it. Auxilia says, I'm in awe of your intelligence, cannot even ask a question, LOL, well done. And then I'm not sure who this is, but they're saying, whoa, that's so deep. I've never thought to think about gaming with activism. Exactly. The next generation in our, the next voice in our generation. Grace says, brilliant, young role model leading from the front. Yvonne says, my son is into gaming and he will love your game. All the best. Oh my gosh. I think you should connect with Yvonne's son, Muni. That would be absolutely amazing. And you'll have a Canadian ambassador already before you've done the third phase of your pilot. So yeah.
One thing, well, I must say that, yes, it is games with activism, but I guess more of the point is it isn't just games. Anything can be activism. And I think I just implore everybody to, even in their everyday life, that, I mean, it kind of sounds cheesy, but to make activism a lifestyle, because if it's not something you live every day, how can you expect that change to come?
Absolutely.
Can I ask a question?
Yeah.
Yes, please.
Hello, hi, Elson. Thank you for your presentation. That was lovely to hear, especially the integration of activism into your day-to-day walk. Should never really be separated. It sounds, like what people call a calling. So you don't park that side of yourself, regardless of what you're doing. So that was really an interesting way to, share with us what you're doing in your world. Now, what I just wanted to ask you, which I think I wanted to ask the young men who presented on cryptocurrency and Bitcoin as well in the last session, I think, is I'm a psychologist, and one of my day jobs is I work with gambling addictions. And what I was just curious about what your experience is from a lay person with regards to, gaming addictions. I work with schools. So I work with a voluntary organization called Red Card Consultancy, run by Tony Kelly, who was a former footballer, and then he gambled his riches, and so he set up a charity. So we do a lot of awareness with schools, not so much the treatment aspect of gambling addictions. So I just wondered whether you have a take on that with gaming, because in our work, because we're addressing young people for this organization, and I just wondered what your views are on in terms of healthy balance, what you're seeing in that arena, so we kind of keep it all balanced.
Yeah, no, I mean, you brought up such an important point. Gaming addiction is a very real thing, and I see there's this kind of adverse thing towards gaming addiction where gamers often don't want to acknowledge that it exists because to them, they're just having fun and it's a pastime. And yes, it is a fun pastime, but gaming addiction is a real thing. And like at the same time, just because you play a lot of games, it doesn't mean you have gaming addiction. Gaming addiction is a very specific thing wherein you are unable to not play when you're playing and you're putting up other things. And of course, everybody does that to a certain extent, but it's doing this to the extreme that I have an exam tomorrow, but I've been playing for 50 hours and I have to continue playing. It's kind of beyond escapism. And it's a big problem in the games industry because certain games are designed to attract people with those vulnerabilities, attract those people and make as much money as possible. One thing I'd recommend is like literally just checking up on, say, your children if they're playing games, when they're playing games, not necessarily to stop them playing games, but to see their attitude around playing games. If you say, hey, that's enough games for today, and they stop, that's fine. But if there's a persistent behavior of constantly, in a way, taking that game anyway, or literally trying to find, those compulsive habits, then there's a problem. And that needs to be treated much like a gambling addiction would be. So, yeah.
Thank you so much for, sharing that as well, because as you say, it's not that we're stopping gambling, but we're talking about problem gambling. And so that's a good, point you make about, it's not so much about stopping gaming, but problem gaming. So when it becomes a compulsive, activity. And I was thinking, especially in this lockdown, season that we've been, whether that would sort of push an increase in problem gaming or problem gambling. So that's really helpful there.
I guess I'd kind of be adverse to that particular analyses, because I guess the problem with the lockdown that we're in is that since people literally have nothing to do, sometimes that escapism can be a good thing. And I don't necessarily think there would be a spike in that problem gaming because, I mean, as I said earlier, it is a small percentage of the population that face that. And I mean, most people can differentiate between, I know I'm in a lockdown now and I'm not going to work, so I will play games, than I am compelled to play games right now.
Okay, thank you. Yeah, I don't know if the young man is here today with the Bitcoin cryptocurrency. Is not okay, because I just realized that recently, some people have lost quite a lot of money in that area as well, and I just wondered whether he had a view on that. But if he's not here, that's fine. Thank you very much, Elson, and I do hope to get your details, because we don't mind having young speakers as well with the gambling addiction service. So it's always good to have a young face, once in a while doing a presentation as well. Thank you so much, sir.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Wonderful, wonderful, excellent. Well, moving swiftly